Well, good morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acomb, and we are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. I received a message right off the jump here. Did I see about the bridge crash in Baltimore? It was showing a video earlier, but now apparently not. Yes, there. Oh, I guess it's not going to play properly. Yes, it's a tragic event. Many cars in the river. I don't have a lot of information. It's kind of tough with breaking news. I'm just looking at what is being said. I'm not sure why that's not sure. There we go. So it's a dire rescue after ship strike triggers Baltimore bridge collapse, sending cars plummeting 180 feet into the water. That is the breaking news this morning. Also, I guess we're going to start on a sad note across the board. This is tragic, and it unfortunately speaks volumes of what we're dealing with in New York with things like bail reform and just the ease on criminals and tying the hands of police. A New York police department, obviously police officer, 31, was shot dead by a career criminal during a Queens traffic stop just yesterday evening, in what is being called a senseless act of violence. Officer Jonathan Diller, a married father of a 1-year-old boy, was shot in the stomach after police tried to remove the suspect, identified by sources as 34-year-old Guy Riviera, from the passenger seat of the car. Riviera was last released from a New York prison in 2021 after serving 5 years behind bars for criminal possession of a controlled substance. His parole in that case ended last year. The accused shooter also served another stint in prison starting in 2011 over a first-degree assault charge before he was released in 2014. Meanwhile, officials said Monday night Jones was arrested on a gun charge last April, but was out on the street. He was arrested in the same police precinct where the shooting took place on April 17, 2023, after he allegedly was found with a loaded firearm, according to sources. He was charged with second-degree criminal possession of a weapon and other related charges. Now, the Mayor Adams, is blaming it not on a crime problem in New York, but a recidivist problem, okay? Some bad people doing bad things to good people, is the mayor's quote. Jones, who has 14 prior arrests, was convicted of attempted murder and robbery in 2003. He served 10 years in prison and was released in 2013. So our thoughts and prayers go out with that fallen hero's family. And I did not mean to start the program with all of that, but it was important breaking news across the board. We are going to talk about New York State issues to start the program. We also have a lot here about Trump. Big day yesterday, of course, for the former president. I mean, it's pretty wild when it got knocked down to $145 million for bond, and that's a good day. We're going to talk a little bit about that, a little bit about the VP hunt. We've got a few things here about Biden and I don't know, what would you say, selling out Israel? We'll talk about that as well. So stay with us. We are just getting started. Thank you for the comments. Thank you for bringing some news to my attention. And we'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us. And we are back with Frankly Speaking here on Big Fox, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Just to give you a little more of an update, because I know I rushed through it with the Francis Scott Key Bridge collapse in Baltimore, to give you a little more information. What happened was, according to a live stream of the bridge, it appeared to show a cargo ship colliding with a support beam, causing the bridge to break and fall. Emergency crews were searching for at least 20 people believed to be in the water. Officials have described this as a mass casualty event. There were no specific number of deceased. Quote, "Our focus right now is trying to rescue and recover these people," calling the collapse a developing mass casualty event. Okay. Now, lately on the program, we've had a lot that we've been talking about. Former Governor Cuomo has come up quite frequently for some reason. But yesterday we had a lengthy discussion about the tragic and disgraceful decision by the former governor to put COVID patients into nursing homes. You remember at the time, nothing had really been done. Well, I don't know if the Assemblyman Phil Palmisano was watching yesterday, but I received this in email late yesterday. Assemblyman Phil Palmisano joined Congressman Mark Molinaro, Vivian Zayas, co-founder of Voices for Seniors, Tracy Alvino, director of Voices for Seniors, and his Republican colleagues in both the Senate and Assembly to once again call for an independent review of how the state handled the COVID-19 pandemic. Specifically, the order from DOH to force nursing homes to accept COVID-positive individuals. This is what the Assemblyman had to say. We are now 4 years removed from the COVID-19 pandemic, but yet we still have not had a proper, independent, unbiased review of the state's action taking during the pandemic. Specifically, we have no answers about how or why nursing homes were forced to take in patients who had contracted the COVID-19 virus. This resulted in the deaths of 1,500 nursing home patients, as they were among the most vulnerable populations in regard to getting and having a severe response to COVID. We must review this policy to have a clearer picture of why this decision was made and why the total number of deaths were covered up for so long. It is imperative this independent review take place to help ensure something like this never happens again. To do anything less would be an insult to those who died and their families because of this tragic decision. So thank you to the Assemblyman. It's not something that people, it's not something that we should forget. And I know the former governor will never take any kind of blame for it, even though he's making the rounds and obviously looking to run for something, many people speculating mayor of New York City. I know he has to go to that congressional subcommittee hearing where he was subpoenaed about the COVID decision, but whether or not, again, I don't see a scenario where he takes the blame, but we're glad there's people like Assemblyman Palmisano out there being outspoken and getting to the bottom of this, so heaven forbid nothing like that ever happens again. Speaking of New York, I know this actually got a lot of discussion going the other day when I was mentioning the governor's plan to hand out free eclipse glasses. Well, she has given you an update, the governor, on preparation ahead of the April 8th eclipse. They put together a playlist that you can listen to. Now, in full disclosure, I've had some people ask me about adding to playlists on this for whatever reason. And I would have to say, I begrudgingly admit that their playlist isn't too bad. Anyway, here's what you need to know about what the governor is doing in preparation of the April 8th eclipse, directing the New York State Police Department of Transportation and Thruway Authority to prepare for high volume of traffic. That's a weird way of putting it. The governor is urging travelers to be patient, be prepared for backups, and always obey traffic rules. Thank you. Ensuring New Yorkers know where to find the proper eye protection. During the eclipse, looking directly at the sun without specialized eye protection can result in serious injury. Working with agencies and local authorities to ensure communities have the tools they need to manage an influx of visitors. Releasing a public service announcement featuring members of the Buffalo Bills, reiterating important safety tips. Warning New Yorkers to protect themselves against potential scams, fake merchandise, and phony accommodation listings. And finally, urging New Yorkers to prepare for the weather. Pack plenty of water, bring proper gear, and watch out for ticks if you're camping. Kind of a catch-all there. Yeah, they also put together, like I said, a soundtrack, I Love New York, on Spotify. You know, kind of the cliche ones that you'd expect, Total Eclipse of the Heart, and Here Comes the Sun by the Beatles and that. But there's some other ones on there. When I walked in this morning, someone dropped me off some glasses. They're not New York, I Love New York ones, but hey, I'm excited about it. So be safe out there, folks. I know you wanted to hear that from the governor. All right, we received a lot of waves. I got to play a little catch up there. All right, we got to take a short break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Our beautiful view of Market Street as we broadcast live from the Hesselson's studio right from that location. Thank you for all the waves. Thank you for all the comments. Moving along, I do want to talk about, well, as Richard Goldberg says, bring them home or not. Biden just sold out Israel's hostages at the United Nations. President Biden cleared the way Monday for the United Nations Security Council to adopt a resolution demanding Israel suspend its counterterrorism operations in Gaza without conditioning any ceasefire on the release of Israeli hostages. Combined with a pressure campaign to deter Israel from dismantling Hamas's last stronghold in Gaza, Biden's signal to the terror group is clear. keep terrorizing and holding hostages because America is pressing Israel to stop the war. And there's a piece at the New York Post editorial board. Oh, this is interesting. Is there a comment from a viewer? Is there anyone our state won't go after? The New York bill holds fashion industry accountable for climate change effects. I had not heard that. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. Yes, and thank you for this. Yes, I did cover it. The ship that was hit that hit the bridge in Baltimore. As one viewer commented, this is obviously tragic. There's a lot of, right now, a lot of questions, not a lot of answers. But I guess if you can find a silver lining in something so sad, is that it wasn't during rush hour traffic, that it was very early this morning. But according to a report that we have from Fox News, they're searching for at least 20, and I don't recall if it said vehicles or 20 individuals. The collapsing of the bridge, the video online is shocking. So yes, thank you for bringing that to my attention. Anytime you think that I missed a breaking story, please let me know. I don't want to miss breaking news stories. So back to Team Biden selling out Israel. According to the Post editorial board, desperate to satisfy the Democrat Party's hard left, the Biden administration just took a giant step toward abandoning Israel by declining to veto the latest UN Security Council resolution calling for ceasefire in Gaza. The measure from the 10 non-permanent Security Council members demands an immediate ceasefire through the month of Ramadan, while also calling on Hamas to release the 100 or so Israelis it still holds hostage from its October 7th terror raid. No matter that Hamas will refuse, the measure still adds to the pressure for Israel to end its necessary, justified, and humane war against Hamas, just as it's getting close to destroying the terror group's last battalion. And never mind that Team Biden itself has warned that such resolutions only complicate actual talks about a temporary ceasefire in exchange for hostage releases, because they give Hamas fresh hope that Israel's quote-unquote friends will force it to stop fighting anyway. The focus on Ramadan is a transparent dodge. Washington should have vetoed this obscenity, but this president can't even resist relying on the terrorist propaganda to call out Israel's tactics as supposedly, quote, over the top. Yes, the Biden team blocked earlier equally vile UN resolutions, but it's plainly starting to cave rather than call out the Democrat Party's ever wider pro-Hamas caucus, which now shamefully includes Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer. I thought this was a really good piece from the New York Post. Remember, Hamas is at the fault for this ongoing war. It's Hamas's fault, not Israel. The terror group could have ended the war months ago by returning the hostages it has instead chose to keep. Hamas could have avoided the war in the first place by not committing the worst slaughter of Jews since the Holocaust. The onus is not now somewhat placed on Israel to simply give up a necessary battle for survival in order to appease the global left. That Washington has joined this farce shows that the rot has fully infected the highest levels of the executive. There's now clearly no hope of a cure without a political change in November, which means defeating Biden and the Democrats who enable him is now a moral and geostrategic necessity. Wow. From the New York Post editorial board. Now, the UN resolution did not condemn Hamas. And why did that happen? Why would the White House let that happen? Quote, because it broadly reflects our policies. It did not condemn Hamas, and that condemning Hamas is important if the UN wants to stand for what's right, but stated that because the resolution reflected broadly our policy, which has not changed, about linking the hostage release to a ceasefire, we abstained rather than veto it. Now, this has led to, and I know I'm running a little bit late here, this has led Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to cancel a meeting between his advisors and White House officials. The U.S. abstained on that resolution, which it could have vetoed by voting against it. The resolution calls for an immediate ceasefire in the war between Israel and Hamas for the last 2 weeks of the Muslim holy month of Ramadan. However, it does not condemn Hamas for its October 7th terror attack, something the United Nations has yet to do, and does not condition a ceasefire on the release of the remaining 134 Israeli hostages. Think about that. The United Nations has not released any kind of condemnation about the October 7th attack, and I know a lot of people yesterday took to Twitter, or whatever you call it now, X and all these things, especially politicians in Washington, to say, why did we give more funding to the UN in this recent bill when this is how they handle themselves. The GOP has been blasting Biden's unconscionable UN vote. Immediately after October 7th, President Biden defended Israel, but it was just words from a failed politician. After a few bad polls, he has now decided to throw Israel under the bus, says Tom Cotton. It's disgraceful that Biden's entire electoral strategy relies on his Department of Justice prosecuting Donald Trump. More befitting of a banana republic than America. That's an interesting point. Now, we've had people who've said, well, how do they say this? Secret part out loud, which is, wow, it really did look like Democrats put a lot of focus on getting Trump through the legal system, more so than campaigning. And they're not really even hiding that fact. The one piece, I want to say it was by Frida Gittes at CNN, saying that, hey, we were happy with the bond, the $450 million bond, because it looks like we finally got Trump, and anything that can knock Trump down a peg is worth it. But I'll continue with some of these comments. I don't want to go through all of them. Senator Ted Cruz saying, today the Biden administration facilitated the passage of pro-Hamas United Nations resolution. I'm calling on the administration officials, including and especially State Department officials, to reverse these reckless and catastrophic policies. I will continue to hold them accountable until they do. Chip Roy saying the failure to veto the UN Security Council call for a ceasefire by Israel and instead abstain is unconscionable. Why did the House GOP just vote to fund the United Nations and Biden? Don't know. Ask the Wall Street Journal. I'm sure they can explain it. Who was this one? I thought this was... Byron Donalds, whose name's being thrown around for a potential VP. Today, in a shocking betrayal, the Biden administration refused to veto a UN vote demanding an end to fighting in Gaza. Reminder, Hamas terrorists slaughtered thousands of innocents, committed heinous war crimes, and are still doing so to this day. Israel has every right to defend itself. Rick Scott saying it's been 8 days since Biden mentioned the hostages, which include Americans that have been held by Hamas for 171 days. Instead, he's abandoning Israel at the UN to appease the radical left and get votes from Hamas sympathizers. It's disgusting and cowardly. All right, we're going to move away from that, but I wanted to pass it along to you. Yes, we can talk about whatever you'd like. There is a lot going on this morning, a lot of breaking news. You can find, I showed that video earlier on Fox News of the bridge collapse in Baltimore, the Francis Scott Key Bridge. Heartbreaking. And if we have any more info before the show is over, we will let you know on the numbers. I know it's all breaking news, mass casualty event. We've got to take a short break. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. I'm your host, Frank Acomb. I'm getting excited. I hope that you are too. Coming up on Monday, we switch to 2 hours. We're going to start at 6 a.m. and run till 8. As you can see, like a morning like this, we have no difficulty filling 1 hour at all. And I know 2 hours will be just as easy. So thank you to all the people that have reached out to comment on that. 2 hours starting on Monday. It is not an April Fool's joke. Or if it is, I am not in on it. Couple comments from viewers. The UN has shown to be anti-Israel for years now. Iran and Saudi Arabia in the Human Rights Council. Biden has shown he is in the complete wrong on foreign policy for 50 years. Thank you. Another comment, I thought this was funny. I sure have been living on the edge all these years without Hochul's advice. Yeah, I think it's funny that she's sent... This is at least the second major press release that I've seen about the eclipse on April 8th. And they are pretty standard tips. I mean, I would say every day go about your life making sure you're not going to get scammed. I would say any day, not even eclipse day, don't stare directly into the sun. Any of these things could have been be patient in traffic. I think they could be used nearly every day. So yes, I appreciate that. Speaking of Hochul, and I wasn't going to bring this up, but it is a good segue. I don't think the budget's going to be... So what the budget is due on the first day of 2 hours of Frankly Speaking on April 1st. Not looking good. And why? Because the New York budget tests Hochul and Democrats on issues like retail theft and migrant crisis. The $233 billion budget proposal Governor Hochul wants to land this week is facing headwinds in a state roiled with division over the migrant crisis, an ideological split inside the Democrat Party over crime and political complexities to expanding housing and help tenants. As, and not to make this political at all, but as I started the program with that NYPD officer that was murdered by, I guess you would say, a career criminal yesterday, it's hard to believe there's still a fight over as they put here, over crime. I should say now it's number 2, but number 1 and number 2 biggest issues to voters are the migrant crisis and public safety. The governor was shocked at how well Lee Zeldin did in that run for governor, not realizing that it's because he ran on public safety. Yet we continue to see these failed policies coming out of Albany. Republicans have successfully capitalized on controversial criminal justice law changes made in recent elections. Wait a minute. Capitalize, like Republicans are misusing this? It's not. That's such a weird way of wording that. Yes, capitalize, those shifty Republicans. But the broad tensions within the Democrat Party between moderate and left-leaning, it's always left-leaning, not far left, it's always left-leaning factions, have made it significantly harder to reach sweeping deals on consequential issues facing a state that has struggled to retain population since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic and grappling with growing budget deficits. Well, it's weird, that sentence too, almost making it sound as if it was a COVID reason why people are fleeing. I have not bought into that theory. I'm sure at first it started, but the exodus has been a long time in the works. So that will probably mean pushing negotiations over a range of issues, from housing, healthcare, and education spending into April. There could be some benefit to waiting until after Easter by giving top lawmakers in Hochul more time to negotiate a complex housing agreement, which is one of the key sticking points. Enough on all of that. Yes, a lot of infighting in the Democrat Party over what to do over crime. Well, I would say what you've been doing so far is not working. I did see, not to bring up so many New York City issues, but I did see that they're adding more police to the subways. Interesting. Probably more about optics there than anything else. All right, when we come back, we're going to talk about former President Trump. Big day for him yesterday. Big day. Oh, yeah, it was $175 million. I screwed up the number this morning. $175 million bond. Now, still a lot of money, but still a victory for the president. We also happen to have one story here about RFK. We may talk, RFK Jr., we may talk a little bit more about the Ronna McDaniel scandal of 2024. What's that scandal? Yes, NBC had the audacity to hire a Republican. It is, yeah. I'm just as shocked as you. Oh, one other thing about New York. I'm sorry. And I know I don't want to continue to focus on New York City, but this is an update from a story that I brought to you a few weeks ago, and it's, I guess, finally coming to fruition. New York City will give debit cards to migrant families for food and baby supplies. So again, showing that they're not taking the migrant crisis seriously, no matter how much the voters scream from the rooftops. It does not matter. The first cards will be distributed to families on Monday, so yesterday, sparking fear that the new program could lead to fraud or abuse, as well as speculation that the city will be prioritizing migrants over current citizens. As many as 180,000 migrants have arrived in the city over the last 2 years, with 65,000 now in shelters. Well, of course it's prioritizing. As one New Yorker said, a lot of New Yorkers can't afford their bills. Where basically is our debit card, right? A family of 4 is expected to receive up to $350 per week under the program, which will last 6 weeks. The program will begin with 10 families on Monday, expanding to about 115 families, or roughly 450 people over the next week. Democrat Mayor Eric Adams has defended the program, saying it will simultaneously feed migrants at a low cost while fueling money back into the local economy. Well, let's give everybody debit cards if it works that well. Cards will be distributed at the Roosevelt Hotel in Manhattan, the city's arrival center, for families staying in hotels under a 28-day voucher program. Cards will be loaded with 1 week of funds. Ann Williamson, Deputy Mayor for Health and Human Services, compared the program to food stamps. I do struggle with why people are being so negative when it comes to providing something so basic for families with children. It's not putting groups against each other. Oh, okay, I like that. That's a great way of doing it. Don't you care about the kids? Don't you? I don't understand why this would bother you, for the children. Joseph Borelli, the city council's Republican minority leader, agreed the debit cards may lower the cost of feeding migrants, while lamenting what New Yorkers will find the program unfair. A lot of New Yorkers are going to take this as something that's fundamentally unfair. There are plenty of New Yorkers struggling to pay their bills. There is your update on that story. Now, a recent poll from Harvard-Harris showed that immigration has become the biggest concern among voters, even over the economy, at a time when we know we are struggling with inflation. Immigration, not inflation or the economy, was cited as the top issue among 36% of the registered voters polled. 36% tagged immigration as the top issue, while 33% tagged inflation, 23% picked the economy and jobs. Wow. All right, we're covering a lot here. Feel free to weigh in on any of these topics or any other topic you would like to talk about. Did you get your I Love New York Eclipse glasses? Have you bought any of the swag that they're selling? Have you made your hotel reservations? Governor Hochul wants to help you along, so you can go to her website, see that nice PSA from the Buffalo Bills, learn how to not look directly into the sun, all thanks to Governor Hochul. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. We are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. We've covered a lot already this morning. I wanted to quickly mention, though, A Taste of Downtown returns. It's going to be at Empire Sports of the Southern Tier, 304 North Main Street, Elmira. That's this Thursday from 5 to 7:30 p.m. Tickets are just $30 and on sale now at elmiradowntown.com. Tickets will also be... It's supposed to say available at the door. I made the font a little too large there. The community is invited to indulge in taste-sized portions of signature dishes from local restaurants, craft brews, cocktails, and wines while enjoying the live music by Cat Cook and Keef Beats. Guests will experience the historical ambiance of the venue while learning more about downtown businesses and nonprofits. I should also mention there'll be raffle prizes, a silent auction, as well as wine and liquor pools. Proceeds from the Taste of Downtown benefit the 17th annual Elmira Street Painting Festival in downtown Elmira, which, if you've got your calendar out anyway, is June 8th and 9th. All right, let's get back to it. We got a nice, well, I'll get to that comment in just a little bit. I don't have time to read it live on the air quite yet. So Trump's net worth has now ballooned to $6.4 billion. He is now joining the list of the world's 500 richest people. That's because it's on the eve of his media company's NASDAQ debut. Former President Trump's net worth jumped to $6.4 billion. Pardon me, a little stuffed up this morning. On Monday, after the merger between Digital World Acquisition Corporation and Trump Media and Technology Group Corporation was officially finalized. For the first time ever, Trump will be listed on the Bloomberg Billionaires Index of the world's wealthiest 500 people. The real estate mogul's previous peak net worth was $3.1 billion. Trump's net worth ballooned by $4 billion over the successful merger between his Trump Media Group and the blank check acquisition company Digital World. Trump Media will begin trading on the NASDAQ under the ticker DJT, like Donald J. Trump, a nod to the presumptive Republican nominee for president's initials. Trump has a 58% personal stake in the publicly traded entity. Trump's media's largest asset is Truth Social. I did not realize this. If you use Truth Social, let me know. I don't. It's not any criticism or anything like that. I'm just not a big social media person anyway. The social media platform where the former president, going by the real Donald Trump, has amassed a following of more than 6.7 million users. Wow, that's very impressive. His vast increase in wealth comes on the same day he snagged a last-minute legal victory when a New York appeals court ruled he could post a drastically reduced bond of $175 million. Isn't that amazing that that's how you celebrate? Well, and we'll get to it in a little bit, but there's a really good piece where it says Democrat lawfare puts Trump through hell, but he hardly breaks a sweat. And that's by Jonathan Turley. Here's a comment. We were talking about illegal immigrants, this migrant crisis, but getting debit cards from the city. I didn't do it right. I paid to immigrate here. No one paid me, but I'm still affected by the migrant crisis since my green card renewal has taken over 2 years and I can no longer travel across the border to see my family in Canada because it still hasn't been processed, even with pressure from our congressman. Maybe I'll fly to Mexico and try again. Thank you for the comments. Keep them coming in. Unfortunately, here's another comment. It cannot be guaranteed that the monies given to those illegal migrants will be spent on the children. Like most monies such as these, it may be spent on things other than food. Also, instead of those families buying actual groceries, it will be on fast food. Okay, sorry. Yes, we've seen the problem very often with like food stamps and like that. There's every once in a while there'll be an audit, and you see where the monies went to. And no, it's not always for, as that person so eloquently quoted, for the children that are hungry. It's not always the case. All right, we've got to take another short break. A lot of comments come in. Thank you. I know it's not the best for me to try to read them live on the air, so we'll take a quick break. When we come back, Trump hunts for a VP close to home. What does that mean? Well, there's some interesting names being thrown around. A couple that I did not even think or hadn't even been considered, I guess, maybe the right word. Yes, there's some names that we've been hearing about for quite some time. But there's a few in here that I think may surprise you. We're also going to talk about the lawfare. Like I said, a couple things about RFK Jr. No more safety tips for the eclipse quite yet. We have a couple more days to do that. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. We are back. No theme music this time because I was reading so many comments. Thank you for all the comments. We don't have time to get to all of them. Just to follow up on one before I went to break. The problem with travel is that I cannot get back into the U.S. without being detained or fined $585 since my green card paperwork still hasn't been processed by USCIS. Come on, America. Loads of immigrants with money from Canada want to be here, but are seriously hassled. Thank you for those comments. Okay. Former President Trump is, according to Daniel McCarthy at the New York Post, hunting for a VP close to home. I had not thought of this name. Maybe you had. Lee Zeldin, the former congressman whose campaign for governor of New York 2 years ago helped Republicans around the state overperform expectations, is one VP contender who hasn't received as much attention from the national media as he's getting from Trump advisors. Meaning that, and I would fully agree with that. I had not even thought of Lee Zeldin, but apparently Trump's advisors have. Florida Representative Byron Donalds is in that same category, but we had heard more about Byron being on the short list. This is maybe the first time I heard Lee Zeldin that I can think of being considered on this list. There's been more open buzz about New York Representative Elise Stefanik, and many grassroots conservatives dream of Florida Governor Ron DeSantis making the ticket, a possibility that well-informed sources say hasn't been ruled out, despite lingering tensions between the governor and Trump over DeSantis' presidential bid. So interesting. DeSantis not off the list. I know it's early, but who would you like to see? A lot of people have said, VP picks don't normally make a lot of difference. But this could be one where it really does make a big difference, convincing some people that may not like Trump to still vote for that ticket if the right person is picked. I don't know. I think that's maybe a little bit of overhype. I think that's the same mindset of people that say that Nikki Haley supporters will never go to Trump. I don't necessarily agree with that either. By the way, speaking of vice presidents not making much of a difference, I saw a piece on Drudge Report today that they're putting Vice President Harris out there because voters are kind of shaky, if you will, on Joe Biden right now. And I started to say, I am seeing her more places. It's not great appearances by any means. It's amazing after almost 4 years that the speech pattern hasn't gotten better, or the word salad, as they call it, has continued. Anyway, I got on a tangent there. Florida Senator Marco Rubio's name has also come up in recent press speculations, though my sources discount his chances, says Daniel McCarthy. He puts a lot of emphasis on why pick some from New York. I guess I understand, because then he's not going to win the state of New York, most likely. The last chance, I think they said the last time a Republican came within 15 points of winning New York, it was like 1988 or something crazy. There it is. No Republican has come within 15 points of winning New York in a presidential election since 1988. There's something to be said there. I do think Elise Stefanik would make a good VP candidate. I also like to think that Lee Zeldin would do good, or I like Tim Scott. Who else? There's so many people that we could throw around, and we don't know. But Lee Zeldin, just wanted to pass that along to you. We do have to take another short break. Oh, no, I've got a little time. Do I want to jump right into that? Let's take that break, because then I'm going to be running late, and then I'm going to be all in a tizzy. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. Broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. I'm your host, Frank Acomb. You're watching Frankly Speaking, which is about to go to 2 hours, starting on Monday from 6 to 8. So mark your calendars, set your alarms. I like this comment. Tulsi Gabbard and Trump would beat Harris and Biden in a tag team challenge. Little Royal Rumble there. Okay. I know Tulsi Gabbard's name has been thrown around quite a bit for VP and is not on this list. Again, this list put together by Daniel McCarthy and what he's hearing, for lack of a better term, behind the scenes. Anyway, I like that. Okay, this is the piece I was talking about. I'd recommend reading the whole thing at the New York Post. It's by Jonathan Turley, saying Democrat lawfare puts Trump through hell, but he hardly breaks a sweat. Democrats lost their minds after the decision for a $175 million bond instead of a $454 million bond. One side announced rich man's privilege prevails and blamed undemocratic judges. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez had previously warned that there is a risk in not seizing Trump's assets. The risk is, quote, political corruption, which seemed a bit odd from a member who was under fire that same week for her blanket opposition to the investigation into the Biden corruption scandal, even declaring that racketeering is not an actual crime in America, a legal view that should be reassuring to Trump given the Georgia charges. Even those who do not like Trump, and this is a point that you've heard me say it a million times, I quote the former Congressman Joe Sempolinski on it quite frequently on this program, but even those who do not like Trump have even greater dislike for the weaponization of the legal system. Yes, and telling you who you can and cannot vote for. So many things that will make people angry, and for lack of a better term, I hate this term, but hold their nose if they don't like Trump and go and vote for him anyway. The array of civil and criminal cases have Trump literally running from courthouse to courthouse, and Trump seems to be loving every minute of it. With every new indictment, Trump's popularity has increased. The lawfare just is not reaching the guy. He appears in his element. Pollsters have even said that James's stated intention, Letitia James, her stated intention to seize his properties would all but guarantee Trump a victory in November. In the meantime, he has already been reversed on two key points. Eric Trump and Donald Trump Jr., the company's executive vice presidents, will no longer be barred from serving in corporate leadership for several years. That was just on a threshold review. This is in response to Judge Engoron's decision of what was made clear yesterday. The appellate court can now review the underlying decision and hopefully inject an element of sanity back into the case after Engoron's flight of fancy on the bloated penalty. The shift in polls over the last year is clearly found among voters who had previously rejected Trump. So far, at least, the expansion of the litigation hell seems to be leaving many voters cold. That may explain all the whistling, John, which makes a little more sense if you read the whole piece. But that's a really good piece by Jonathan Turley. Oh, hey, look at all these waves coming in. I'm sorry, I was a little slow on the uptake this morning, getting all the waves in. One last thing before we take our last break. RFK Jr., who we mentioned yesterday, is going to be in the somewhat area in, what was it, West Seneca? In April. I was going to say, I hope it wasn't April 8th, or you might want to call Governor Hochul's office. Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s presidential campaign accused Nevada's Democrat Secretary of State of corruption on Monday, claiming that the election official and the Democrat National Committee are in cahoots and, quote, inventing a new requirement for ballot access in the state that has zero legal basis. This should come as nothing new. Now, I know he's running as an independent, but if you remember how the system was rigged against Bernie Sanders at the time when they wanted Hillary, so it should come as no surprise. At issue is RFK Jr.'s failure to name a vice presidential candidate on ballot access petitions his campaign has been circulating. Nevada law since 1993 requires that independent candidates, quote, designate a nominee for vice president when collecting signatures for ballot access in presidential elections. The apparent mistake could force the campaign to start from scratch in its bid to collect more than 10,000 signatures so Kennedy can appear on the state ballots in November. This is the epitome of corruption, said his attorney Paul Rosie. One other thing on that, and I thought this was a really good point. This is the party, meaning the Democrat Party, that rigged the primary election against Bernie Sanders in 2016 and RFK Jr. in 2024. This is the party that canceled its own primary elections in multiple states this year and decreed Biden the winner without a vote. The DNC is spending millions of dollars in a frantic attempt to keep Kennedy off the ballot because they cannot defeat us in a fair election. They cannot face us in the contest of ideas. The death throes of a party that once stood for working people, but has long since abandoned them to Wall Street, Big Pharma, Big Tech, and the endless war machine. The Democrat Party is the biggest threat to democracy in this country. Wow. By the way, he's going to make his announcement, it looks like, for VP, for his running mate today. We'll keep you updated. Stay with us. Last break, and then we'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on Big Fox. Boy, this one went fast. Thank you to all the comments. We just don't have time to get to all of them because I am out of time. Just quickly, Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski ripped their bosses over Ronna McDaniel hire and said she won't be invited to Morning Joe. Probably the best thing that could happen to her. Did we? Oh, no. Okay, we may have had a little technical glitch there. It says reconnection successful. We'll see. All right. Well, hopefully. So Ronna McDaniel is not invited on Morning Joe. As I said, that may be one of the best things that happened to Ronna McDaniel. Scarborough said management never asked him or his wife about whether McDaniel should be hired and that they learned of the news through media coverage. Wow, I'm surprised they didn't come right down there and ask the morning stars of MSNBC what they thought of that hiring. Rachel Maddow calls NBC decision to hire Ronna McDaniel inexplicable and then compares her to a mobster. NBC is now considering cutting ties with her because of this intense backlash. We shouldn't laugh about this, folks, because let me tell you right now, this is the same talking points they're going to use against Trump as it nears the election and his surrogates, that we can't give them a platform to express their hideous, inexplicable views. So we can't show a debate. We can't show a town hall. We can't show a rally because we can't give him a platform. You're seeing it right under your nose. This is just the beginning. Like David Rutz from Fox News said, NBC considering cutting... this was the wrong one. Morning Glory. Oh, this is Hugh Hewitt. I'm not a huge fan of Hugh Hewitt, but I thought it was a good point. Ronna McDaniel was the best hire NBC could make. He goes through and says, look at, George Stephanopoulos. You look at all these people that are very left-wing that have been hired forever. She has sources on the right side. The problem is the Manhattan Beltway media elites is that not just that 95 to 100% of them voted for President Joe Biden, but that's unfortunate for the health of the republic. But now execs can work to overcome that. Yeah, I think that's a little wishful thinking. Also, one last thing, a piece if you get a chance by Glenn H. Reynolds. Why our institutions keep going woke and going broke. Kind of an interesting piece. Thank you to everybody who joined us. A lot of fun this morning. Oh, how about this? Larry Elder and Victor Davis Hanson for VP, or Victor Davis Hanson for VP. I like Larry Elder a lot. Thank you to everyone who reached out this morning. I know I missed some. It was a very busy morning, but we had a lot of fun. So have a great day, and we will be back tomorrow morning starting at 7 with Frankly Speaking, only on WYDC TV. Big Fox, I look forward to it already. See you tomorrow.